Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the Divine Brothers podcast coming to you all over the world, Alabama, China, Hawaii, everywhere. And today is a very special day because somehow we got a special guest. Everything's been changing since Austin came into the picture. And we have somebody, he looks like to me somebody who came from the band Leonard Skinner or something like that. But this guy, his name's Bobby. And I think I have maybe a vague memory of running into this guy in the strange world of Huntsville, Alabama, but he comes on the high recommendation of young Austin. And Chase, you have a small memory of this guy. I think so. Is that correct, man?
He said he wanted to have Bobby on. I was like, oh yeah, Bobby. And I was like, I know the name. And if I saw him, I'd recognize him. But then I couldn't put the pictures. I thought it was just tall, skinny kid in my head. I was like, tall, skinny kid. Yeah. So it's been a while since me and Bobby talked, maybe 15 years. But we've all come back together.
And that
So,
begs the question, Austin, why this Bobby man? Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you thought he might be a good little addition here?
yeah.
Bobby is a very interesting cat. He's a longtime researcher into subjects like mysticism, altered states of consciousness, magic, and Buddhism. He's studied notable philosophers like Plotinus, Kant, Hegel, Alfred North Whitehead, among others, and has a pretty adequate grasp of those things. He's a very unique and eclectic thinker, and I think you guys would really appreciate his opinions on a couple of different topics that we might talk about today.
Austin, that
I
was the
didn't
greatest
realize that.
intro I've ever heard in my life. I hope when you introduce me, you go into that much detail too. So yeah, that was
I didn't
good.
realize that like Huntsville, Alabama was this New Jerusalem of deep thought. That's not what I remember growing up,
You
but
put
anyway,
rednecks and rocket scientists together, you get some weird combinations, man. And maybe
yeah.
that is enlightenment. Maybe that's it.
So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bobby, welcome, man. I'm glad you could be here.
Hey, hey, thank you. Yeah, it was a great introduction.
Uh, but you know what? That
It
that
was a
begs
great
the question.
introduction. It really was great.
Bobby, if I remember right, you were more like a Garrett friend than an Austin friend in the beginning, and there was sort of a transition that happened there. Is that right, or am I misremembering that it was always the Austin friendship?
Uh, sure. I probably met Garrett first, but I kind of met the brothers kind of all around the same time.
Yeah.
But
Who did you meet? How were you introduced to them? I guess that's
um, playing Halo, I think mostly because I was skateboarding and I was liking skateboarding, but then Ben came over and was like, "Hey, we should go play video games," and so then I kind of got introduced to the whole family over there.
gotcha. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Can I just say that one of my earliest memories was like going over to Marty's house, and there would be like six Xboxes connected by wires, and they would all be playing Halo 1. And I can remember getting my ass utterly handed to me every time I played. Like, it was unbelievable how good they were, man. They could throw
Yes.
those plasma grenades like nobody's business, and it was just shameful. I never wanted to play Halo again after getting my ass beaten so hard over there, over and
So those stupid Elrods, man. I was there. They bought that Xbox and they wanted to get some skateboarding game. I was like, motherfucker, we're getting Halo. We're not getting the skateboarding game. And they fought me tooth and nail. We took Halo home from the store, nonstop playing it. I also want to say we were all pretty equal at the beginning, and I think I took like a break for a month and I came back. They had just played every day, all day. They killed me.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun anymore. They just kicked my ass. I was like, this isn't even fun to play. You guys are just too damn good. I think they went pro. Some of them went pro. Like it was
Yeah.
they got way too good.
Yeah, well that was kind of it. Like one of our players dropped out. We were about to go to a big tournament in Nashville and our player dropped out and so we got Garrett in because Garrett was the
Garrett was
best
good.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we just started playing all the time and going to big tournaments and winning a lot of local tournaments and stuff. So
Well,
it was really fun.
this is a four-man team. What is this? How does this work?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Halo, right? You got four people on your team. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, four man. Last split screen, face to face, kind of playing each other. A lot of
Yeah.
yelling, a lot of, but really good. One of the game made me realize you could be really good at something if you did it all day long and you do it every day of your life. for 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day, every day of the week, you can get really, really good at something. Because we
Hey,
were one of the top 50 teams in the U.S. for a time, for a couple of years there.
Bobby, does it work the same way you think as like an athlete? Like two people can train the same amount of time, but athletes he's just got it genetically. Can you have that for a video game, you think? Like the
Yeah,
hand-eye coordination? So some people are just going to be a lot better than others. Some are born to be professionals.
I think I think there's definitely like a difference between talent and genius and like skill. I think you can train skill, but I do think there's natural talent, and then some people have a kind of genius that's kind of
Yeah.
above other people, and they're kind of just have a grasp of the game and the rules, and maybe they have a natural tendency to the movements and stuff that other people just don't have.
Can I ask, did you guys ever run into like a Michael Jordan of the video gaming and like in the Halo?
Sure.
Dude, this guy's the
Yeah.
best. Really?
But Garrett actually got second place to the best player in the world
No way. He was number
in
two?
a free for all. He got 49 to 50 to one of the best players in the world. So I mean, we were definitely up there for a little while, but he was definitely by far one of the best players around here.
Hey, let me ask that four-man team. I know we're
Hmm.
talking Halo, but I'm interested. I don't fucking care. Did you guys play positions? Did you? Because nowadays, when I think of the team games, there are these they play competitively, but they got different positions, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like people are playing a different type of way. So is
it was kind of like that. It's kind of like almost anything like a band or something. Like everyone's kind of got their own pace and their own
right.
rhythms and what they do the best. And one thing about Halo that was really interesting is you could kind of watch each other's screens because you were on the same screen. So you could kind of almost see the whole level through each other. And you were kind of like watching each other's, you kind of all like worked and moved
Yeah.
as almost like a unit as you're kind of watching each other's back and moving around the space and stuff. So it was a really interesting kind of like, I thought of it kind of like a band or something kind of like, artwork or something where you're kind of working together, creating something in a way.
Dude, I never thought of that. All the perspectives on one. You had to have one huge television. I remember it was split into four, but you could see where your boy was at and the angle he was taking. So it really helped, actually. It made it all
Yes.
just one player, essentially. Four people
Yeah.
playing as one.
Yeah, it's a huge help really to see each other's screens
That's
for
cool,
sure.
man.
Yeah.
Wow. They should have an old school tournament like that. I bet it makes a big difference. I never thought about the psychology
Yeah.
behind it. That's kind
Well,
of
that's
cool.
one thing that like Halo really taught me a lot about just everything because reaction speed is kind of a natural thing. You can't
Yeah.
train your reaction speed really. It's very difficult to. So you really see like how people work around having slower reaction speeds and like with better aim and things like that. You can do all kinds of things to like really amplify how you move around and play if you really understand what you're doing.
So did you have that? Like, all right, I'm not as fast, so I got to be more accurate. Is that kind of how
Yeah,
that's
sure.
how was that
Yeah.
how it worked for you in the game?
I mean, you definitely know certain players are going to be better than you at doing certain things, so you got to try to beat them any way you can.
Making me want to play fucking Halo, man.
Well, it's
Shit.
kind of like Michael Jordan. Like Michael Jordan, like it's clearly the best player a lot of times. And there's one play he he's running down the court and the referee's running backwards and then the referee turns around to start running forwards. And in that moment when the referee turns around, Michael Jordan gives the defender an extra push and goes around him. And so it's like the guy's even like going beyond the rules of the game and noticing like how the refs are moving and everything and like using that to his advantage. So you're getting like certain players can just do things that other players really don't recognize.
I think back of Garrett. Me and him, it was a tumultuous relation. We got along, and sometimes we would argue. And the reason I get mad at Garrett sometimes is like, God, he's an arrogant motherfucker. Sometimes, like, so, you know what I mean? He just would piss me off. And but maybe that was it. I mean, if he's ranked two in the world at Halo, fuck, I'd probably start to get a little big ego too. I'm like, fuck, man, I'm pretty, I'm the best. Fuck, get out of my way,
Yeah,
Chase. Yeah. So now I kind of understand him better. Maybe that was it. He was trying to be number one. He was so close. It could have been it.
yeah.
I do want to ask one last thing about this Halo thing. 'Cause it's interesting because I think that maybe there's a book here on the wisdom of Halo 1. You know, I, about that,
Sell millions. Fuck.
no, millions,
I'd have
millions
that
right
on my coffee table. Absolutely.
there. But one thing I remember, see, the thing that shocked me, because I remember this like dawn of the age of like online play in video games, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It was kind of Wild West time, you know? Like I remember getting for the very first time on Xbox Live and being like, "Hey guys, let's play the game," and be like, "Shut the fuck up! Who the hell do you think you're?" Like, I could not believe the trash talking that would happen
Yeah.
in these things, you know? And I'm curious about kind of what was that world like at the very beginning? Like, were you meeting people like, oh yeah, I'm playing with this guy from Turkey, or oh yeah, you talk insane trash to one another. Did natural rules develop, or was it really just anything goes? Was like, what was the insanity of
I
that
mean,
world?
it was pretty. It was way more intense than nowadays, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, people talk about toxicity or whatever nowadays, but back then it was a whole nother kind of thing. I mean, it was not really. I mean, it depended on kind of where you were, but there wasn't many checks on insults or anything. So there was a lot of a lot of cussing, a lot of all kinds of insults and that kind of stuff. But we were all young. I mean, we were some of the youngest players at the tournaments as well. We had to go with Justin's mom because we couldn't enter by ourselves because we were all 16 and 15 and stuff. So it got pretty intense and pretty uh,
Oh,
toxic, I guess.
dude, it sounds like it was like a really positive portion of your life playing in those tournaments, man.
I really, I really, I really enjoyed it. It definitely showed me that you could be the best in the world at something if you really put your mind to it, if you really try and you really do it all the time, that you can definitely become really, really, really good at something. Way better than just anyone that plays on the weekends or plays every other day or something.
Yeah.
So how do you go from like a 16-year-old playing Halo to a dude with an impressive stack of books behind him? There's some kind of there's an evolution that happens here, some kind of transition. What happened, man?
Yeah, I well, a lot of things were happening, but I started to get interested in, well, I didn't try psychedelics until kind of later, right? But then I tried psychedelics one time and I did it by myself. And like I realized in that experience that I didn't have any words to describe anything really, like my states of mind, what my feelings, anything going on internally or anything. So I in that experience, I wanted to start reading, but I wanted to start reading like literature and poetry and things to like so I could speak better or express myself better. But this was kind of like rolling around in my mind, and I kind of got a couple books at that time, but they were kind of related to literature. And then I saw I saw a show about a guy named Edgar Casey, right? And he
Oh
was
yeah.
a he was like the sleeping prophet, and a lot of like even oil companies came to him, presidents, actors, like, oh, and he made a lot of really interesting and really good predictions. But the one thing he said was that everyone had abilities like he had, but everyone had their own capabilities and abilities depending on how you train and what you do, and so if you could kind of tap into that nature that everyone had these kind of special abilities. So that kind of interested me. And he also said something like about God, like how he saw all moments of reality as one moment. And this kind of like sparked my mind a little bit as far as like, because I'd had another kind of early kind of nitrous experience, like around the same time. And I saw like a brain inside of a brain inside of a brain inside of a brain, like kind of infinitely, and it was like a mirror reflecting a mirror kind of thing. And like I kind of at that time was like, that's kind of how the world is or something. Like that's like it's like nested minds inside of minds inside of minds. So I
Hey, can I
really,
can I ask you before I forget?
yeah.
Because
Hmm.
it hit me right when you started this was So I did psychedelics, but the first time I do them with somebody I trust. I mean, that's what I
Yeah,
was
I was
kind of
gonna
told.
ask that too, man. Doing it alone is a
Dude,
big deal.
what, yeah,
Yeah,
what made you make that decision? I know you don't know
Uh,
what you're getting into, but that's bold, man. That's
yeah,
well,
really
well, I
scary.
had like people around me, but they weren't tripping, you know. So I
okay.
wasn't that worried. But for the first couple hours, I just did it alone, and I tripped alone a lot.
So
As
you got
far as
used to it.
because it was to me, it was kind of like an experiment or something, you know. I wanted to know like
Oh,
what it was. I wanted to start to really like look into the nature of myself. My mind kind of really did start kind of changing because I really never read books or anything like like in school or later on and when I was playing Halo and stuff. Like I wasn't reading books or anything, but this kind of like really jolted me into start really like because I realized I didn't know anything or everything I knew someone else told me. And I learned from some other place or something. So I wanted to start like really learning stuff for myself and like really figure out what was true and what was real,
hey,
you
so
know.
with that learning, did you hit it with that Halo work ethic that you developed? You're like, you know what, man, if
Well,
I'm gonna hit it every day, I'm gonna be good at this.
yeah, exactly. Well, I definitely started like, well, what happened like that after that Edgar Casey show, I started to go Barnes and Noble and buy books and stuff, and I found this book, it, this small little book called Awakening Your Psychic Powers, which is pretty funny, but reading it, it was a great little book, and in it there was a quote from perennial philosophy in it, and when I read that quote, I was like, I got to get perennial philosophy. I got to buy this book. So I bought this book, and then like I read that book in like 2 days, and I'd never read a book like that before. And then I
That's
Wow.
started to
impressive.
read it again, and like it was, and I would cry when I would read the book, you know, and like this. So, but what it showed me, because I was already kind of an atheist a little bit, and kind of scientifically minded. Like I was good at science and history and civics and that kind of stuff, but like what that showed was like mysticism is something that's universal and more appears like something real rather than something fake because everyone in the world is experiencing it. It's in every culture and they're using the same words to talk about it, and many of them use the similar methods even though they don't know each other. So it's very obvious that there's something there that's more real than it is fake, and so that kind of like got me really interested in starting to study mysticism.
So I think you
So,
must have. I was gonna say, did you introduce Austin to perennial philosophy? Who
yeah, keep
introduced
stealing my
me? Who
questions,
introduced
Chase. Yeah,
Dean?
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was.
Who
There's
got
the
yeah.
source. There's the source right there. There he is. Yes.
Yeah. Austin started coming around when I was really in the first couple years of my study, when I was really starting to like I was studying 8, 10 hours a day. I was doing it kind of like I did Halo. I was reading all
Wow.
day long and getting up and reading all day long, going to bed, getting up and reading all day long, going to
So,
bed.
this is, and I hate to keep sidetracking. So how did you do that, man? Because somehow I got a PhD. It almost I don't even like thinking back toward the end because
Yeah.
studying for 8 hours a day almost killed. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
built to
see,
do it.
I wasn't able to do it with school either, really, but I found with these subjects, like I just had like kind of a love and a passion for like
Wow.
philosophy and science and all this stuff. And I started to really want to just learn things I didn't know. I wanted to know things I didn't know. I wanted to study things that I'd never heard of before. I wanted to really start to look beyond myself and to try to figure out what was real and what was true and what was like beautiful in the world kind of, you know.
It wasn't work to you. This was
Huh?
it wasn't
No,
it didn't feel like work. Yeah.
no, it's more like they consider like even conversation as an altered state of consciousness, but there are certain states of consciousness that are brought on by study and by
Okay.
that are similar to meditation in a way, and that definitely can increase your like inspiration and insight. And I found that I could kind of blow my mind and kind of keep blowing my mind with things I didn't know, and it would kind of like became about kind of like expanding my mind, expanding consciousness. What became kind of the goal of a lot of the study, like how can I expand like myself beyond what I am currently into something new or whatever, you know?
I want to say with that Huxley book, Perennial Philosophy. So I only knew him from Brave New World, which I read and I
Yeah.
understood the dystopian. Like I understood that. I was probably 21, and I
Hmm.
got that recommendation from Austin. I mean, I was probably older, maybe 25. But I remember reading Perennial Philosophy for just first page or two, and that reaction you had with the tears, like it shook me. I don't know if it was tears, but it was definitely teary-eyed. It astounded me. I was like, I thought I knew this author. I thought he just wrote stories about the future, but his the vastness of his knowledge. I remember it was humbling for me. I was like, oh my God, I'll never be that smart. I thought I was kind of smart. Maybe I'm fucking not. It was really humbling. So yeah, similar reaction. I just want to say that
Yeah.
it shook
And
me.
that book
Yeah.
too, I kind of did the same thing with that book as far as like it had a bunch of quotes in it. So I just started going
Mhm.
in the bibliography of that book and buying every book. I started to buy the Plotinus book. I bought Varieties of Religious Experience. I bought
Smart.
basically every book on Meister Eckhart book, all the books on all those mystics, because I was really into primary text as well. Like I like to read the actual text, not necessarily someone talking about the text, but I will read that too. But I definitely like to first try and read the text myself and try to understand what the person is actually trying to say rather than try to get it from somewhere else. So it was kind of like a continual search for primary text and for the actual words of many of the great mystics and the great geniuses and visionaries of the world to try and really see what the best of the best were saying about the nature of mind and consciousness and things like that.
The primary text.
Interesting, because you know, Austin, I kind of want to bring you in here, man, because does this mean that Bobby is sort of your John the Baptist, paving the way for you? Yeah. I mean,
It sounds like that was the start of the friendship. This was the focus that kind of
yeah.
brought y'all together, right? Shared
But
interest. Yeah.
is he responsible, Austin, for sort of dragging you into this world? I think we found the Jesus-like figure. He looks like him, you know? So, yeah, I'm curious
Mm.
about this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Bringing Bobby on, I didn't realize how closely intertwined we all were together. Because Bobby really was the start for me for studying these texts. He recommended the perennial philosophy countless times. Every time I went over there, he was probably, he might have mentioned it. And I read it. I was thoroughly impressed, just like he was. And I was so impressed, I sent it to Chase. I bought the book. I sent it to him. I don't know where he was at the time, but I was like, dude, like Chase has to read this book. I bought it and I mailed it to him, right, Chase?
You did. And Bobby, I just want to say this. I'll let Austin go. So it went to me, went to the brother, and then it went to my dad. And my dad loves that book. And my dad's thing is he comes out, he's like, hey, have you read this book before? I was like, dude, I told you to read it. And he's like, no, no, no. I think I told you to read it. He's like, just takes credit for it. But in all actuality, it's you, Bobby. So you've affected the whole family for the better. I want to say that
Yeah.
book will change you for the better, guaranteed.
Yeah,
Guaranteed. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Bobbity, I don't want to puff him up too much, but he's a seminal figure because I was just kind of like a very lost young person with absolutely no direction, no beliefs, not even atheistic, just non-philosophical completely. And I just happened to run into a guy that was reading really good ideas and liked to talk about really interesting ideas. And even though I haven't lived the philosophical life at all times, it's always been there in the background as a tool that I could use, and it's had an enormous impact on my life. And and it's still my passion to this day. So I'm incredible happy or thankful that I met Bobby, and we're friends to this day. We still hang out. We still talk about a lot of the same things. We still bring up perennial philosophy to each other here and there. So
That
How do
was it.
things go from like being a friend with Garrett and playing Halo to like what drew you to the little brother that was hanging out there in the corner? You know what I mean? Like, Bobby, why even talk to this kid?
Um, he actually he got brought over by Grant, I think, was really like what so, I mean, we hung out and we talked and I always messed with him and joked around with him and stuff, but he really started coming over every day to my house when like Grant brought him over and for just randomly one day. And I was kind of at that time I was really kind of going at it as far as talking and exploring stuff. So I was kind of just every day, and then he just started coming over every day and started and listening to me and started and reading the same stuff and then we started doing a lot of lucid dreaming and that kind of stuff. I was talking about that stuff. I was talking about magic. I was talking about all that kind of stuff.
Oh my God, Austin, so much is coming together about you. So you were sitting at the feet of his cloak like he's Aristotle, just drinking in the wisdom every day. Lucid dreaming, magical thing. It's all coming back to me. Austin, I had no idea what an influence this man was on you.
Well, it's kind of
Yeah.
cool because Austin was the source of a lot of great books for me, and definitely lucid dreaming. So that's how always had it viewed in my head. But this is Austin's source, so this is cool. Another perspective now. I dig it, man.
It's
Yeah.
good though, 'cause I thought it was like a sort of virgin birth where like just suddenly
Yeah, we thought you were
all
like a
like struck by the divine, you know what I mean? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This is the Messiah. You lied to us, man.
I remember another like really important memory. It was like before I had done anything, before I had meditated, before I knew about lucid dreaming. Bobby was talking to me about astral projection. I was just sitting there on his bed. He was talking to me about it. I was like, you can leave your body? Like, what are you talking about? And it was like an instant spark of fascination. And I started researching it on my own, bought Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming, Astral Dynamics, and a few other texts. And I eventually did it. And Bobby was probably one of the first people I told that I did it because at the time, I'm sure we were in frequent communication. I don't know if I was there every day, but I updated him on the progress that I had made. And we actually told him about my first, he had heard it 1,000 times, but we actually re-went over my first astral projection on a test podcast that me and Bobby had done earlier this week.
Hey, I got a question because um, Bobby's brought up magic in his introduction. I was like, magic, because we're talking metaphysical and we're talking magic. What is magic? Is that a trick? Is it a real like what it I don't talk about magic much. I'm curious what you know about it. Just sparked my interest.
Um, well, it,
Is it in the spiritual realm like that? That kind of sort
sure,
of right? Yeah, yeah.
sure. Like I can actually consider it very, very important, really. Like, because a lot of it has to do with kind of how minds interact with other minds, how the mind interacts with itself, how you change your mind with ritual, how you use symbols to change your mind, how you use ritual and symbol to change other people's minds. There's a lot of stuff that gets into magic that gets really deep into the natures of consciousness, and it's a very old tradition all over the world. There are magical traditions all over the world, so you start to get into some really deep um, explorations of consciousness before there were really a lot of structured systems about how to do this. But magic itself, like you get less advanced and more advanced systems, and it goes into like shamanism and stuff. But there's a lot of it that I got really interested in being able to externalize the mind. And this idea in magic was like that you could evoke entities to fit the visible appearance. And like this idea kind of sparked in me that like if I could evoke my own ideas in front of me, or if I could evoke my mind where I could see it and talk to it like it was like an entity, that would be something really interesting. Like because I didn't necessarily know if the systems would work in themselves, but I was wanting to kind of like break down the systems and use them like these processes for the mind so I could really like well I wouldn't have to talk so much if I could like externalize my mind, you know.
Sure.
So I really got into visions and visionary experiences and genius and the imagination and how and trying to really because I don't really see images in my head. Like if I close my eyes I see mostly black. So like I was really trying to spark my imagination and spark my internal vision because I read in all these texts and all these things that you could spark your inner vision and have visions of deities and all kinds of things if you really could control your mind or really push your mind to these kind of higher states, you know.
Did I
Did
mean
you?
did you? I was gonna say, did you get there? Like, what was the results, man? Yeah.
I think magic is very I've had success. I've done successful ritual. I've done things that I think have been successful. I've magic to me is kind of like a psychedelic in a sense. Like it's a mind expander. It's something that you can use similar to how you use a psychedelic, but it takes a lot more practice and it takes a lot more time. and you really have to evolve, like kind of get obsessed with it, and kind of start to use your subconscious and unconscious minds in ways that you don't normally use. And so it gets very intense. I would say magic is definitely like, especially like when you get into Buddhism and stuff, like Vajrayana, right, is a magical, one of the most magical forms of Buddhism, and they have some of the most advanced practices to deal with the nature of mind and the nature of consciousness in the world. So magic can get very, very. It can go from, love spells or spells about things, but I always considered it more so something as like a very important kind of spiritual thing for mind expansion in a way.
The way you explained it, you compartmentalized it. You broke it down like science. I have never thought of
Yeah.
magic that way, and I kind of just realized, like, man, society's done a good job of vilifying it. It's like, it's kid shit. It's a narrative in a movie. I've never thought about these. Yours is pretty much just. I'm going to study this. I'm going to see the components
Yeah.
of it and see what works. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great book on magic by guy named Lynn Thorndike, where he considers magic kind of a repository of the experimental sciences, or more an early part of experimental science. And if you read a lot of magic, it kind of reads like that because it's people just trying things. And so it ends up being a lot of really kind of experimental metaphysics, experimental psychology, or
Oh,
something. Like you're
it's
really trying to interact with your mind in a strange way.
both metaphysics and psychology. So
Yeah.
obviously you've had your own experiences. What's one that's just like, dude, this. Yes.
I'll give you a weird, because what I found about magic and the occult, especially entering them, is they bring about very strange dreams, and you start to have a lot of synchronistic experiences, and you start to have. I'll tell you about one ritual. Like this is the ritual I think that was most. I don't know if it was successful, but I'll just tell you what. I was doing a ritual from this book, and it was a called Vodon Gnostic Workbook, and I was taking it very serious. I was home alone for a few days, so I got all this stuff ready, and I did this ritual. I meditated, did this ritual, and then like my my stepmom and dad came back, right, and she didn't know anything about this. They had been gone on vacation, right, and she brings me a voodoo doll. Right. And I've never received a voodoo doll ever before
Neither
in
have
my
I. What
life.
a great
Right.
gift. One of y'all
Yeah,
should
like a
give me one for
little
Christmas. Yeah.
string voodoo doll, right?
Yeah, cool.
And so that was just weird, right? I was like, that's kind of weird since I just did this thing and it's related to that. And she gives me the, and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
then the next week I get another one, like a different color, but from someone else. And it's the
Randomly?
same kind of thing. And then like a couple of weeks later at a festival I went to, someone else gives me one. So I end up with 3 voodoo dolls in the span of a month, right after I did this voodoo ritual. And I've never got another one in my life. And I never got one prior to that moment.
So for
Right.
you, it would.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
speaking of synchronicity, yes. So
Yeah. It
I'm
was
in the
just a
middle.
strange thing, you know?
I'm in the middle of a Secret Santa with my colleagues at work and stuff, and I have just created yesterday a voodoo doll that I'm going to give. I'm going to give to one of the teachers. And you know
Yeah.
what's even crazier?
See?
So what I was going to do is I'm giving it to a teacher who has like this horrible class, like the worst misbehaving students. So I was like, all right, I'm going to put the Chinese Hanzi, the letters of each student on there that they can stick needles into when they're pissed off. And me and the boyfriend he's Chinese, got into a really intense argument because he was like, don't do this. And I was like, why not? He's like, it's magic. If you can't write down a Chinese person's name, you can't do that. And I was like, do you believe in this shit? You believe? And he's like, I know. I just don't do it. You can't do it. So we ended up like writing them in English and writing the opinion and stuff like that. But literally the same conversation and voodoo dolls and belief in magic all happening. Bobby, you have a natural synchronization that you're bringing to the universe, my friend. This guy's scary, Chase. I'm starting to think we might have a messiah in our presence.
So let me. I gotta ask this though, because you get the voodoo dolls. How do you know? Because you know the super skeptics out there. It's like, how do you know it's
Sure.
beyond the realm of chance? How do you convince yourself
Well,
that
I don't.
okay? But there is a lean though, for sure. I can tell by
Sure.
talking to you. Yeah.
Well, as far as like this is kind of far into my study, kind of quite a few years because like I didn't really do any practices or any rituals, so for quite a while. So this like there was another. Okay, I'll tell you this one too. This is kind of another random thing, but a synchronicity thing kind of stuff.
Okay. All right.
I did a ritual to one of the goetic entities that was for getting a job because I didn't have a job and I was trying to get jobs, right? And
What is
I and
goetic?
I
I don't know what
didn't
that word
really,
means.
What did go edit? What did you say, Dean?
What is
yeah.
goetic? Is a goetic
The
entity? I don't know what that is. Sorry.
the Goetia is like a book of spirits and a book of daemons from the Renaissance, 1500, 1600.
Okay, okay, cool. Go
Um,
ahead.
but there was one for like getting a job, right? So I do this ritual, and then like the next day, the next day I get two job offers on the same day, and so that never happens. Another thing, just skeptical kind of thing, but just a thing that like it's just like you start to see interesting things. But I will tell you too, ritual. If you do a ritual for 5 hours, 6 hours, or something, like you can go to the Hindu temple here, and you can watch a Hindu priest pour oil over a stone for like 6 hours, and it's very impressive, really. But you can really start to see how extended ritual can really affect your consciousness in really interesting ways, especially if you start to kind of hype yourself up and get to higher and higher and higher levels of excitement and all this kind of stuff. Because you're kind of trying to bring about visions and bring about dreams and stuff. Because a lot of times with magic, much of it will work better in your dreams. So if you do the magical ritual in your dream, you're much more likely to meet the entity there than in normal waking state. But if you can get your mind to where you can control your imagination almost completely, where you can see visions when you think about objects and things like that, then it's quite possible to really use magic to its fuller extent.
So what have you I assume you've met these entities that you've talked to or put the ritual toward in a dream at least? In a dream?
The only real entities I met have been on DMT.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as like full entities that I interacted with and led me around and things like that. But as far as magic goes, it's never it's never that direct. Magic is a really like interesting because it has to do with subtle states of consciousness, altered states of consciousness, states brought on by ritual, states that take a lot of really intense experience to bring about, like very kind of rare states that are not that many people don't have necessarily in their whole lives. I mean, many people never experience some of these things. Like they're not things that you would just kind of can run into a lot of times. Like
So
you have.
this is something I asked Austin previously. You've mentioned so many different things, and I can imagine you've read every kind of book from every kind of religion, and all kinds of deep thinkers and mystics and stuff. And to me, it's almost like being in a spaceship and going from one galaxy to another galaxy to another galaxy. I can't imagine how different some of these ideas are. What I'm curious about is this idea of practice. Yeah, in terms of taking everything you've gathered, have you been able to sort of develop a system or a way of living that's sort of the Bobby philosophy, so to speak? Or
Good
is
question.
it or is it just, nah, man, I just go from what I'm interested in to what I'm interested in, take the
Oh,
wisdom that I can, and I adjust along the way.
Well, I have ideas about many. I have many ideas about many things. Practice, as far as like hardcore practice goes, I really started doing that with like meditation, and that became something that I got really, really interested in because I found it more so through Plotinus and like Socrates and stuff because they talked about these moments where people would like contemplate moments of contemplation, or people moments where people would fall into this kind of bliss or these kinds of states and not know anyone was around them and things like that. And silence became really interesting to me. Silencing the mind, silencing the thoughts, so I could really experience the nature of reality without the filters of my ideas, in a sense. So that's when I really, so I already knew kind of, I came to this, I or saw that relaxation was important in all traditions, that there were moments of relaxation and moments of meditation everywhere, that this was kind of a universal. And so
How
I
close are those
started,
two tied? Just curious. Relaxation and meditate. Is that are they brothers or are they kind of distant cousins? Like what's the
I
difference?
think, well, there are some interesting studies about this, because they're like, I think relaxation is key, as far as like meditation a lot of times teaches you much to relax, because like when you have a very intense experience, one of the best things can do is relax. And especially if you want it to keep going and not get caught up in your own self and your own limitations and things like that, the best thing you can do is to relax. And what becomes interesting about, like, especially high states of Buddhism and stuff, is you're doing very high energy things, but you're meant to relax within these states. So you're doing something that for many people would be a peak experience, would be something that they're only going to experience a few times. And so they would be very excited and it would make their mind very busy. But you would be in a state to where you're relaxing through this high ecstasy. And so there's a lot of benefit to really learning how to relax the mind and really start to have moments between your thoughts, and start to extend the moments between your thoughts, and then start to have longer periods of silence of the mind. And I do think it's really important to stabilize the mind, especially if you're going to try to have intense psychedelic experience and magic and all these kinds of things, because it does make people go crazy and stuff. I mean, a lot of these ideas make people scared, make people crazy, make
Yes.
people, I mean, there's a lot to it, that if you don't really know what's true, you don't really know how to look at things, that it can be somewhat dangerous, depending, you know.
I thought one of the you said at the beginning of this podcast, and I thought it was a really it's a very wise perspective when you're going into a place unnoticed. I look at it as an experiment. That's the term you used, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's what it should be. It's not a voyage or you're not lost in the jungle. It's just like, no, it's an experiment, man. Let's see where this takes me, see what I learn about myself. That's the best
Yeah.
way to, I think that's the best mindset you have to alleviate all the anxiety and maybe be able to relax a little more.
Yes.
And my other
And that's,
question, my other question was,
yeah.
are you a person that can you relax easily? Some people can do it and stay in that state much longer than others. And the ones that really struggle with it, I imagine would really struggle with the silence exercises.
Yes.
So do you
I
have a propensity? Yeah, which way
I
you lean?
I would say it was very difficult in the beginning, but I would also say I was kind of prone to depression in certain ways. And
Mm.
my depression kind of expressed itself as kind of desolation in the mind, like there's like nothing,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So I already kind of understood this emptiness of mind, in a sense, through negative experiences, and like self-consciousness through negative experiences. So I kind of wanted to start to understand how they kind of talked about how you could have experience more related to positive self-consciousness, and more related to just deeper experiences of the nature of your own mind, that are more kind of pure and in a kind of different vein than normal experience, in a way.
Wow, that see, that's interesting to me. Austin, I'm really curious what you think of that, like the idea of the desolation of the mind. Because Austin shared about his own depression sort of being a foundation for going deeper and stuff. And Austin, I'm reminded of that David Foster Wallace story you shared with me this week, because these horrifying moments of suffering, can lead to moments of like truth and actual, I guess, enlightenment is the word and stuff. I am uh, curious. Did you find the same sort of experience, Austin? Like going from the desolation, or maybe you'd use another word, into something deeper?
Yeah, desolation is a good descriptor of depression. Uh,
I like that term. It's like scorched earth, man. There's nothing left.
yeah, that like I can't say. I think my mind was a little bit different in that I would be more prone to too many thoughts, and
Yes.
that
Mm,
Yeah, a lot of people. Yes, that's a lot of people
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, when I first started, right, I meditating specifically, I was going through a very intense time in my life. As far as like my girlfriend of 4 years broke up with me with one of my best friends, right? And as far as like normal life goes, that's a fairly big thing, especially when you're young, and you think you're going to marry the person and all this stuff. So it was
Yeah.
a very kind of traumatic time in my life, but that was also the time I was meditating the most. I was meditating every day. And I would meditate in the morning. I meditate at lunchtime. I meditate at the afternoon, and I meditate before I went to bed. And I did that daily for months. And so, at this time in my life, when I was going through these experiences of such intense anger and sadness and hatred and pain and all this, I was meditating. And so I really started to watch like what they talk about in meditation and stuff. You can see how thoughts develop and where they come from and why these vibrations start, why they carry on, what they're influencing, what other things they're influencing. So it really gave me a really deep insight into the nature of my own mind, like sitting through such intense anger and such intense pain and things like that. So that was also one thing that kind of amplified my early meditative experience in a way.
So you're basically going, it sounds like you always come back to this idea of dealing with your own mind. Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess that begs the question, where is it now? Do you have this healthy relationship with your mind where it almost does have that separateness that you alluded to earlier? Like, could you almost talk to yourself,
Sure.
or separate
Yes.
yourself from these thoughts and that thought? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I think now I'm better than I've ever been in a sense. Like I would say, as far as not my knowledge goes, knowledge is better when you can talk about it every day. Then you really can hit things and really get into things. So I've lost memory of many things, but I still I consider the mind to be it. Like the mind is the fundamental nature of our experience. And the mind is related to life in this very straight. I think life and the mind are kind of two aspects of the same thing in a sense. And life and mind stretch back way before humanity. So I kind of consider the mind to be something. It's the most interesting thing to me, and it's always been one of the most interesting things to me. It's one of the most unique aspects of reality. It's one of the most rarest things in reality is life and mind. And I consider like everything humans do as kind of different expressions of the mind or different externalizations of the mind in a way. So the mind has always kind of been a central and very important aspect of my study. And I used to say consciousness a lot, but I do think it goes even beyond consciousness. Like because I do find a lot of these terms are still kind of not that great, but it's just what we have. So it's kind of all we can do in a certain respect.
Wow, man. Yeah, I would describe my relationship with my mind like dealing with a wild animal.
Yes.
It's there's no control at all, you know.
Well, it takes a long time. It took me a long time and a lot of effort to really get my mind to stop and slow down. And
And it
and
does come
and
back to that practice, yeah. The
yeah,
meditation, the relaxation,
yeah.
just that all the time. Even to this day, you still do, yeah.
I actually don't meditate as much as I used to, or hardly
Sounds like Austin.
hardly at all
Interesting.
recently. No, but it's
Man,
something that I
he got
just
what he needed from it, maybe, right? Yeah.
no, I still think of it as valuable. I just try to incorporate it more into my daily life. You try to have moments of meditation all throughout the day. You kind of try to silence your thoughts. You kind of
So
try to center yourself. But I still, when I feel like it, will get down in front of, like, I have a whole setup for meditation and stuff. So I'll get down and sit and go through what I like to go through and do those kinds of things. But
Great.
two, there's always feelings and certain things. Certain times in my life, I'll get inspired. I'll get sometimes and it'll spark some inspiration in me, then I'll start practicing more. Or I'll start looking into a practice that I want to know about that I didn't study as much before, and start trying to learn it and look into it. And because I do think that's what one thing like the Tibetans that's really interesting about them is they have this system of masters and students that have been there for since 900 AD, so over 1,000 years, and it just gets into like great people doing great things.
Bob, let me ask, because my
Yeah,
dean lives in China, and I'm gonna go visit
yeah,
him. And I've brought up the suggestion because it I don't know, it makes me a little excited. It's like, dude, we should go to Tibet. We should fucking just go down and go to Tibet. Would you go to Tibet if you had the chance? He says it's not the same now because of China, but
sure.
just the essence, just what was, or maybe what still is. I'd love to just stand in the
Yeah,
energy. It would be fucking incredible.
I would definitely like to go there. I would like to go to Nepal. I would like to go to Nepal as well.
Bhutan, Bhutan,
Yeah,
fuck yeah.
but I do think as far as Tibet goes, they had a real, even a more rarefied system than India because of where they are. And like for a time in Tibet, everyone wanted someone in their family to be a saint. And there were monasteries popping up in every valley, and they weren't even connected to each other. They were just
What an
different
expectation,
masters. Hmm?
man. If the
Yeah.
expectation, hey, you're the saint in the family, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
okay.
but they produced more saints, I mean, in a short period of time than maybe anyone. And their proficiency at meditation and their just occult practices, their magical practices, their tantric practices are it's some of the most advanced stuff in the world. I mean, that's ever been created. There's nothing else more advanced than it, really.
I've been close to Tibet. I don't want to go because they make you fucking. They're like, oh no, they're gonna report on, like you're
Yeah,
gonna send stuff back to the press in America. So they make you stay on a bus, and you have to go to the places the state says you can go to, and you can never be outside of a police officer's vision.
yeah,
But I will say I have been to Lijiang, which is on the border with Tibet, and it's right at the start of the Himalayas,
yeah,
and the first thing you notice is you can't fucking breathe. The altitude is so high. Like it's higher than Denver, it's higher than the Rockies. Like I had to like
yeah,
go get an oxygen hit. Like I had to go sit in
yeah,
an oxygen bar for a while. And I was like, holy shit, these people live up here. But the thing you immediately notice, and I saw this in Switzerland too, there is a insane eerie silence that hangs over the mountains. Like you'll be standing out there looking at this epic view that's screaming, amazing, amazing, amazing. And there's a silence that just settles over everything and it seems to extend infinitely in every direction. I could see people living there immediately going internal, and just
yeah,
going naturally to a sort of meditative state because that silence would do things to you. It would silence your own brain. So who knows,
yeah,
Chase? Maybe one day we'll go check it out, but it definitely seems like a cool spot.
Bobby,
yeah.
when I was a professor in Thailand at this university, and I had these students from Bhutan, and it, you can go to Bhutan if you're invited, or you have to
Mm,
pay a fee. So one of my students invited me over there, and her dad was like a tour, one of the top tourism people. But it was right when I got off the plane, I was like, I this feels different, and I it was as close to a psychic ability as I've ever felt in my life. This place felt different. The conversations were so balanced. They never swayed either way. Like, well, this is the state of the world, but I don't understand the American perspective, and I have the Bhutanese perspective. They were just so balanced. Cops came up to shake my hand. People were singing when they were working. They were like, doo, doo, doo,
It's
doo, doo, doo,
exactly like
doo.
Huntsville, Alabama. I'm
Man,
telling you.
it was one of the best weeks of my life, man. That vibration there was different, and there was a balance that I haven't seen anywhere else, man. It's one of my favorite experiences of my life. Actually, it was beautiful, man. I snuck some LSD into that country too, and got a little high on a road trip, and I think that fucking enhanced it as well. So
yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's where Buddhism. See, I studied the cult and philosophy and stuff, but then since meditation was so prevalent in Buddhism, I really started to study Buddhism really heavily. And then so I spent a good 4 or 5 years solely studying Buddhism, and I kind
Really?
of went away from all Western texts, and started to study because I was really interested in Indian Buddhism specifically, like Mahayana at the beginning, and Hinayana. But then I got interested in Tibet as well. But I still have a great interest in like India and Central Asia too, because Central Asia, that like Greco Buddhism was a thing, and so you
Oh
have a lot of
yeah,
this
Bactria,
crazy influence. Hmm?
Bactria.
Yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah,
are you can find like Greek statues of Buddhas.
What?
yeah,
It's a
What? Really?
oh yeah, it's a really crazy place, man. That was one of Alexander the Great's generals. Like
Where's
he's
this?
so
yes,
Where's this?
like I think modern day like kind of Afghanistan.
yeah. Afghanistan, Pakistan. Yeah.
What?
And see, actually, these were Buddhist strongholds. Actually, Pakistan, North, and Afghanistan, but they were actually repeatedly destroyed in those places over and over and over again. But these places were actually some of the early places. The Greeks were the first ones to represent Buddha in human form. Like
What?
the early representations of Buddha were all stupas and mounds. And actually, the Greeks were the ones that started. Most of the early images of Buddha you see are from Gandhara, and Gandhara is a city in Central Asia that was a Greek territory until the second century BC, and then was taken over by the Indians. So you have images of Hercules, Buddha,
Yeah,
and Vajrapani,
I
which
was
are
about to say that
in the
there's the
same
famous one
image.
of Hercules. Yeah,
Yeah,
Hercules and Buddha hanging out
Dude,
together.
they
That's
would
it.
totally
yeah,
be friends, man. They would totally hang out. They would. They're like
yeah.
Really stuff.
BFFs right there.
But what I got interested in too is you get these yogas of light and these traditions of light, and from studying mysticism, I found the university of experiences of light as well, and so I started to look into like traditions that had practices associated with light and the nature of mind, and so
I don't know what you mean
and
by light. What do you
Yeah,
mean light?
yeah. Define the.
well, in general, like just light, like if you think of primitive person in the dark, right, and you don't know there's a storm or something, and then lightning happens, that's like a very impressive experience. That's something that could transform your whole life, really.
Sure.
And even the moon coming out from behind a cloud when on a dark night when it's completely dark, if a long time ago, that could be a salvation in a sense. So you have all these kind of early experiences of real light, natural light, that could have been very impressive to start people having experiences of inspiration or mystical experiences. But also in Greece, right, you had a temple to Zeus that had the first lightning rod on it that is known in history. Right.
Wow.
So you have a temple to the lightning god, and you go up to this temple, and lightning strikes the temple while you're there. Like
I
these
believe
kind of
whatever they told me. Whatever they told me, I believe
exactly. I mean,
it.
that kind of experience would be hugely impressive on the mind. But see, what I found then was Vajrayana. Vajrayana means the lightning vehicle. So I was already studying lightning cults, or these cults of enlightenment, because Apollo is also related to light and mystical experiences of light. Because there's actually long traditions in many cultures of experiences of light in dreams or visions, and seeing light around people's heads, seeing light around people's bodies. This is a kind of a universal thing with spiritual experience all over the world. So I kind of became really interested in, is that real? Right. So I started to look into, and our body does have photons in it, and our cells do produce photons. So I found
Sure.
that to be kind of an amazing thing. And then I started thinking about it. Maybe the mind moves in the same channels that light does, or something. Maybe there's some kind of connection with light in the mind. So I started to really start to just study yoga, study meditation, study tantra, study all these traditions that talked about the light, no, the nature of the pristine nature of the mind, and light and clarity and spaciousness, and all these kinds of things became a prime interest.
So what are some of the conclusions after studying the light, the mind?
Well, well, see, the Tibetans, right? They have one of the only systems left in the world where they say their people turn into light still, and their bodies shrink, and all that's left is their hair and fingernails when they disappear. And this has been recorded repeatedly, and and I thought you think this is impossible or whatever, but if you really look at the practices, if anyone's turning themselves in the light, it's probably these people. So it's really becomes really interesting because the methods they use, like the dark retreats, and the methods they use to kind of turn every organ into light, turn the whole body into light, the whole brain into light, they last months at a time. And some of these masters, like these people do it 20, 30, 50 years sometimes. Like you have people that are kind of extraordinary in a very real way. And you can, and what with meditation, right? They already show with scientific studies that meditation puts the brain in gamma brainwave states, which are higher energy
Highest.
brain
Yes.
waves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the studies show that the more you meditate, the more your brain is in these higher energy states. And so if you do it for 50 years or something, you're making this state all the time. Like you're not entering gamma, you're in gamma states all the time. And it kind of the science is even showing that this kind of is a way to kind of like make your brain function at higher energy levels. And that just in and of itself is something that I think is very important. Just as far as science goes, you know.
This is what you've read, but this is also what you've experienced. Like it's enhanced. Yeah, the state of
Sure,
consciousness.
yes, for
Okay.
sure. Like my experience of the world is way different than it used to be. You know, the world comes is so beautiful at certain moments that it is almost inexpressible. Like it's very like when you start to really see kind of what they're talking about as far as like the nature of mind and the nature of reality and this thing that's kind of in front of you all the time but you don't see it, but it's kind of the source of everything and the source of all of our lives and minds. And it's kind of like because they talk about, right, like you have this invisible thing in front of you that's underlying space, underlying the air, and in that thing there's the potential for mind. There's the potential for life in that thing. And if there's the potential for life and mind, there's the potential for all life and mind ever. So you kind of get into this thing where you can take life, if you take the conditions for life anywhere in the universe, life will arise there. Just like a flame, if you take the conditions for a flame anywhere, a flame will arise there. So you have this quality where it's like a field. It's like a field of nature itself, like life and mind. And they're kind of, there's this, you can really dive your mind deep into the fundamental natures of reality if you really want to. And the mind is so old, like it's such a thing that has such age, you know, and so brilliant in its nature that you can really, you know, it's a profound thing. I mean, you can go as deep as you want, really, as much as you can stand. I
Well,
mean, it'll
you're expressing it. You say them together, conjoined, but I mean, these are two very separate concepts in your mind. The
which
life and mind, life and mind, life and mind. Like
well, see what
mind,
I
you're
think is
presenting
that,
as older, right? Yeah.
well,
It's
what's
like
interesting about, well, this is a difficult thing. What's interesting is like how did I put it? Like you have energy and life. You have energy and life, right? Kind of at the beginning. And energy, life eats energy, but life also eats itself, usually to keep going. Life has to eat other life forms.
yeah.
So you have this strange form of energy that's kind of eating and fucking itself into existence, right? And so you get this kind of thing that's very early, very early. But then the mind, right? If you look inside the cells and you cut it up and you there is no mind in there and there is no life in there. So you can't find either of those things if you cut it up, right? And you just find atoms and molecules and all these things that don't do anything if you put them in a bag and shake them up or whatever. They don't do what they do inside the cell. And if you break the cell, it'll die and you can't bring it back to life. So you have this thing where like like life is to energy what mind is to life. So they're intertwined in a way that I think is very deep. And I do think as far as consciousness goes, life is way older, especially human consciousness. Like you have states of the nature of mind that are way, way, way older than consciousness, and they don't need consciousness in a way because they're kind of absolutely aware of the nature of reality because of their existence. The nature of their existence kind of makes them absolute. Like every atom is kind of absolutely aware of every other atom just by the facts of electromagnetism and all these things. Like they're aspects of the fields, different aspects of the fields. So I I think the mind is just something that like you can really these all the terms kind of fail. I don't even think it's the mind. It's just, or life. It's something, but there's no real great term for it. But I do think that mind and life are intimately related at the fundamental level.
That's some high level shit, man. High level. And I'll be honest, I only got about 5% of that. But you're clearly somebody who knows some cool shit. That's all I can. I do have sort of a wrap up question, one that I'm always curious about, and maybe you don't think in these terms, but as somebody who's really like spent a good chunk of their life diving into the mind, diving into the spirit, you know, um, do you believe you have purpose or something you're meant to do here, meaning for you as an individual? You've spent this time studying this shit in the finest state in America. And I'm just kind of curious, like as you get older, you get wiser, you go through the realities of life, and you start to have this better relationship with your mind and spirit. Do you look at this time you have here and ask yourself, all right, what am I here for? Or do those questions not enter your mind?
I for I mean, for most of the time, I don't think in that way. In a sense.
Mm.
Like it's not something.
So,
But
so,
over time,
Bobby, I'm curious. You say you don't think that way. So, there's been psychological theories built, and it's a huge point. Like you have to have purpose, and if you don't have
sure.
purpose, life will have no meaning. And you're saying I don't think that way. So you don't?
Well,
Do you think it doesn't apply to you, or you think the terminology is just insufficient, or something like that?
I think that there is inherent meaning in existence in a way that is kind of beyond what I have to establish. And like these things would still be true if I never existed. Like if I never knew about these things, many of these things would exist and still be real and still be as amazing as they are.
Sure.
And so ultimately, but over time, I do think as far as like a purpose or something, I definitely have certain skills or certain things that other people don't have, or I can see certain things that other people can't see at certain times and things like that. And I don't know if that's like I do think at certain times, I feel I should have put myself out there more because I kind of chose to go internally and to kind of to really figure out myself. So, but I don't know as an overall purpose. I think life is inherently meaningful, and you can make it much more meaningful if you want to. And it's kind of important to have meaning in your life, but you can kind of, I mean, meaning and values are established very early in life, and you kind of got to get lucky if you don't kind of train your mind and stuff.
How about this? Have you ever considered taking all the knowledge, all the experiences, and writing a book? You ever thought about it? No?
I mean, I have tons of stuff written down. Sure. I mean, I'm not that great of a writer. That's where like I'm kind of better at conversation. That's kind of like has been my whole thing for a long time. Is like conversation is the place where I tend to express myself the most. It's very difficult for me to sit in a room and kind of write it down because I already know a lot of things myself. It's kind of hard for me to talk to myself. It's much more easier to talk to other people in a sense a lot of times.
Yeah, you've had
Did,
really, I was gonna say, you've had really good transitions in dialogue. 'Cause for someone that has dialogue all fucking day and then constantly keeping a conversation going, it's a very, I can tell that's where your strength is. I guess that's what I'm saying over the writing. Well, I don't know about the
Yeah.
writing, but yeah, that's a strength. Yeah.
do you ever find yourself saying, though, like you have this gift for gab and you're able to read books that others can't and you're able to really look internally? And do you ever say to yourself, why Alabama?
Sure.
Why not Tibet? Why not fucking India? Like, why the
Sure.
hell did you put me in this godforsaken place, you know?
Well, I definitely I've definitely wanted to start things here, like monasteries and stuff and things like that. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely would be more. I should have left a long time ago. I almost did. I almost became a monk. I really uh, was very, very, very close to becoming a monk at one point. So there are definitely points in my life where I should have left a long time ago. We all have our own weaknesses. We all have our own problems. You know, like it's not like the path is very difficult. It's something that's very, very difficult. It's some of the most difficult thing you can do, especially nowadays with all of the beautiful things we have and all this stuff. It's very difficult to leave all that behind, to leave everything behind, to truly do it and to truly do it correctly is a very, very difficult thing to do. And I didn't know about any of this. Like I didn't sign up for any of that. When I first started, I didn't know it was gonna get to this point, or that I would ever really start to understand a lot of these things. This was not really my intention. It's just my questions kept being answered. I kept finding new things to study.
What was the term you used for what was it? Devastate? No, what was the mind? How did you
Desolation.
desolation? And I have another guy I see in therapy. He's like, scorched earth, man. There's nothing left. I'm like, it's like, okay, but I tell me if I and this is just kind of a hypothesis I got. So you tripped this first time, and the mind is desolate, and I imagine just an empty vessel that's never chose to think about anything deeply, just hollow. And then all of a sudden, you're exposed to the other end of the spectrum. So there was no predisposed disposition of like a script. There was no like strong script in life that said, "Oh, I need to think this way. I need to do this." You were just there was nothing there. And I think maybe that might have served you so well because I hear this conversation like, "Yeah, man, I can focus in for 7, 8 hours. I can do it." I don't know anybody that can do that, like without getting whipped or something like that. So I think maybe starting from the get-go, just a flat surface and flipping to the other side, maybe it made it more of a passion, more of an easier transition for you. Yeah.
Sure. Well, and too, in Buddhism, right, they talk about cessation and cessation of the mind.
Mm, mm.
And then there's a great meditator right now that they're doing studies on that has really great talent with cessation, and he can enter cessation at will and very quickly. And they've shown that the cessation is different from sleep. And so I got kind of fascinated by this as well, especially early on, that you could and even now, like that the Buddhists found this technique where you can kind of turn your mind off. If you follow this script, this thing, you can turn your mind off and stop and enter a kind of state that is beyond the normal state of being, and then you kind of receive insights after, which is a mark of the experience, and has always been, is that you come back and you receive insights, and you kind of hit a moment of unconsciousness, which can last a long time depending, but then when you come back, you have these deep moments of insight. And see, I found this to be all this stuff just was very profound to me, that you could really turn off your mind, that you could turn yourself off, that you could lessen your ego,
Well,
all this kind of stuff.
I guess I'll say you feel like anybody can do it because to me, as you went from one contrast to the other, maybe that
Yes.
helped you. But someone that's highly, let's say, like Austin earlier, his depression was more the cycle of thoughts, the cycle of thought.
Sure.
I imagine the concept of clearing the mind would be unbelievably difficult for someone that's that wouldn't say high
Yes.
strung, but overactive mind. Yeah.
Yes, it's very difficult. And it's also very difficult, like women and things like telling a woman you want her to be silent and things like that.
Yeah, they don't get
There's roles and things
it.
like, if people don't understand, if they don't know you, things like
Yeah.
that. It's some of this stuff is very difficult to get across. That's why psychedelics is kind of like Terrence McKenna talks about psychedelic, because it's so easy. You can just take the psychedelic in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The person experiences the thing, and then you can talk to them about it. But with meditation, it does take time. It takes a lot of effort. It is difficult, and I do think, I don't know if everyone can do it, but I do think like it's worth a try. And definitely, everyone's mind, even the greatest meditators, talk about how the mind is active when you first start, and how it's very difficult to quiet the minds, even the greatest of the greats. So it's something that, and then you have to go through boredom. You have to get up. You have to sit there while you're bored. You have to, like, pain, like pushing yourself through all these things for really no reason. No reason that is normally thought about. You're doing it for emptiness, in a sense. So because you're trying not to fixate on any one thing in a way. So like these things, I think they can be done by anyone, but it's very difficult. It's just like playing basketball or anything. I mean, it can be done, but most people aren't going to do it, and most people aren't going to do it well if they do it, because it takes a lot of effort and time, and they don't have it
And it goes
that
right
time.
back, it goes back to fucking Halo. I mean, if there wasn't any Halo, you wouldn't have the discipline to do it.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Halo, all praise. Halo, what is a Halo? What is a Halo essentially? It's just something that floats around your head, right? A symbol
Light.
of divinity, right? Yeah, that's you're, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think as far as like I was a very naive person. I was a very kind, but I was an only child. So I was like, all throughout my life, early on, I was teaching myself things. And I was like looking at the world for information a lot of times rather than talking to other people and things like that. So I kind of had a kind of a, like I had a lot of experiences when I was a child that were kind of, well, not a lot, but I had to, like one day when I was 7 or 8 or something, I woke up and there was this feeling of bliss or like elation that was kind of unmatched. Like I've never had this feeling before, and I didn't know math the day before in school, but I woke up and I knew the math, and then I saw how it extended into the math, the next math, and this experience lasted for like 4 or 5 hours, and then it just faded, and then I didn't understand the math anymore, and I didn't, and like all this stuff. But from
That's
and I had a
powerful,
very
man.
active like dream life where I
Yeah.
would try to catch the edge of sleep and fall through endless tunnels and things like that. So I had a lot of it, and also an experience that was kind of like an out of body experience where I thought my whole life could be a dream of someone else or something like that at a very early age. So I kind of had a lot of kind of just interesting experiences that, I was kind of an atheist and into anarchy, into punk music, all that kind of stuff before I got into spirituality. like
Yeah.
so I kind of came from a more kind of hard edged kind of side early on.
Desolation.
Well, in a way, because my depression was definitely, that's why I picked up meditation, or why it was something that I could really see how it worked. I could really see, like, even though I couldn't like do it as well as these other people, what these other people were saying is true. It just takes time and effort to get there. But you have to quiet the mind. And I do think in a sense that did help me in a sense, as far as like, since my mind was prone to kind of being quiet or being completely empty in these moments, that it aided early meditation.
I think that's an unbelievable blessing. And I have that too. I can quiet my mind, and these other two on the podcast definitely cannot. So I think that I don't know if that's call it an advantage in that circumstance. Sure.
Well,
So,
and we ran the sensory deprivation float spa, right, as well,
oh,
like
you a
Chris.
part of that? You know who gave him that idea? Yeah, this
Yeah,
guy, right? As long as he
I
gave me credit, good.
Oh
well
my
I
God, I
was the
forgot
one.
about that.
Yeah, like
It's a
I was
great
one of the
idea.
ones
Yeah.
talking about sensory deprivation very early too, or one that brought it up and was talking about it, and I got to help run the place and do that for a while. So I think these experiences are kind of very important.
Did you brought that up? So I was in Bangkok the first time I did that. This fucking
Yeah.
drug addict, rich millionaire, rich kid's son. It's like he's a fucking trip. He's a spoiled rich kid. He was running this float spa. It was super nice. It was fucking kick ass. You had your own floor. You like had
Oh,
everything. Yeah, I mean, you had it set up. Afterwards, just sit there and smoke a joint, man. I'm like, okay. Like before, he would offer me like weed cookies or some drugs, and that was the first time in those float tanks where I realized that I could I could move beyond boredom. Like it blew my mind. And there were one or two times where the music played and I'm coming out of that. I'm like, I was not Chase. I was in another world, another life. It was powerful.
yeah,
So as far as meditation, those were the greatest and heightened states, even though it was maybe drug induced a couple times. But that experience was profound and so much so that I sold Chris on it and he started his own spot. I was like, this is life changing shit. Life
yeah,
changing shit if you use it appropriately. Yeah, I wish it would have worked out for you guys.
yeah. I mean, like, and also like I introduced a guy, like he said I do underground psychology, but I tell him not to say that. But it was a guy I met in college, and I was sitting in the back of the class. He beelined it to the back of the class, sat right beside me, and we started talking. And then we talked for hours after class. And he was kind of a soldier guy, had a lot of PTSD, real bad PTSD.
Okay.
And and I told him he never heard about meditation or DMT or anything. So I told him to study and got him to study it. And then a couple months later, I let him, or a month later, I let him try it for the first time and did like a couple little things or whatever. But then this guy, I mean, he went to like Nalanda University or whatever in Colorado and became a psychologist, and then he went down to the Amazon multiple times. He talked to Congress about psychedelics for PTSD, like so. It kind of there are definitely things that like you can catalyze people's experience and change people's lives with very just if they read good stuff, if you introduce them to good things, interesting things, you really can change people's minds and life fairly quickly in a lot of respects.
And
This
the more I
did.
listen to Bobby, the more I'm thinking that purpose is clearly to start a cult. You know, I
Could
think
have.
that he's got the look already, and he's already touched people's lives. I'm telling you, maybe Huntsville is the new Jerusalem. You and Austin start the monastery. You
No.
take the remnants of the float tank business, and that's where it begins. This is where the whole world changes,
Yeah.
man.
Would be nice.
I would, if I could go back, I would paint a much better picture of myself where I'm this enlightened figure. I think I've already said too much about my inadequacies for anyone to think I'm a savior at this point.
Well, Austin, just know this podcast, you will change lives for the better and also for the worse, but more so for the better most of the time, brother. Yeah. Dude, you didn't say much today. Did you have any insights? I know it's your buddy. You probably already
Was
know all this
sitting at the
shit.
feet of the master, man. He couldn't say anything. Oh, you
Well,
disrespect.
yeah, yeah.
I
Any perceptions? Yeah, what's up?
No, I feel bad because I there were things I wanted to say, but I was really tired from the day, and I just didn't feel prepared, you know. But I think Bobby did a good job. I think a lot of interesting ideas were transferred, and I was pretty content to sit back and just let you guys have this discussion because me and Bobby have
Hmm.
already talked about these things. This is a novelty to you. I'm familiar with his ideas, so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I want to say, Bobby, man, especially that experiment thing. I got one client in particular. Sometimes you just try to help people, and it's just like, good God, they might be crazy. But I think if she can learn to look at life sometimes as an experiment, as much as a information-based person that she is, I think that actually might alleviate a lot of her anxiety. And it was just interesting. It was so matter of fact for you. I just tripped alone and looked at it as an experiment. I was like, yeah, that's fuck. Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Makes too
Yeah.
much sense, man, because it calms the nerves. And we talked about being relaxed and shit. I was like, that makes perfect
Well,
fucking
also, I mean, it's like discovery, I
yeah.
always felt like you're on the leading edge of kind of
Mindset for
reality,
discovery. Yeah, amen. That's
Yeah.
right. Good fucking
Yeah.
point. Yeah,
Like
man.
you're like Marco Polo, So, like it's very important kind of like and I consider shaman and magicians and yogis and stuff. I kind of consider these people on the leading edge. I mean, they're doing things that nobody else is doing. They're putting their mind in states that they don't even know what the end is really. They're just putting themselves there and trying to figure out what's going on, and
Yeah,
that's
but
really
listen,
important.
but society, nobody, we don't prop these people up. You know, like there's not a voice for the masses where it's like, hey, this will better you.
Yes.
It's fucking money. I don't know why we do that. It
Yeah.
bothers me on a deep level. There should be some great little guru out there that doesn't. Of course, maybe
Well,
they
He's called
destroy him on TikTok. Who knows?
well,
he's
I
called
think
Dr. Phil, Chase. Come on,
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah, Doc Phil. Yeah, that's right.
I think that's the shame of our society, though. In a sense, well, we killed all the Indians, so we killed a lot of the natural indigenous spirituality in the United States, and then we transplanted another spirituality from the Middle East over here. And I do think it's a real detriment to our society that we don't have like something that's like spirituality, but not necessarily religion, like a university where you can go to and you can learn everything.
Right?
You
Yeah,
can learn about your mind. You can learn about your consciousness.
where
You
the
can
fuck is
ask all
that
these questions.
concept, man? How
Yeah,
invaluable would that fucking be? You know?
exactly. Yeah, it's crazy to me. And a place with like sensory deprivation chambers and EEGs and all the advanced technology. Like you could monitor you can meditate, monitor your mind, talk to other people, have classes, all these kinds of things that like, and really get into like what it really is, like not as a religion or as spirituality even, but what it actually is. What is the true nature of all these things? How do they work? Like how do you get this to happen? And it's amazing to me that we don't have anything like that. Because it seems to me you could make somewhere so good that people wouldn't want to leave, like especially with psychedelics and tea and all this kind of stuff. Like you could make places so amazing, really.
It would be so fucking good. You'd have one in like two or three in every city, man.
Exactly.
It's the place of growth. Yeah, I'm right with you, man. I'm so disappointed in the spiritual essence of humanity at this point in time. It's just I guess I just stay numb to it. I'm like, "Oh, we kind of fucked that one up.
Yeah.
It was a swing and miss. Whoops.
It,
Oh
Yeah.
well.
there's an opportunity for a new one to come up, man. You know, like there's always been places where people have conversations, you know, whether it's the church or the Roman bathhouse or the Korean spa or, you know, like these are places that people can go come to and have conversations. There's just a need for a new idea, you know, and it's
Yeah.
going to begin
Yeah.
in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm telling you,
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Let's hope not.
So
I'll find a better spot.
just to wrap things up, Bobby, you know, if you were a young, eager mind and you wanted to sort of take a dive into this sea of knowledge, man, do you have a recommendation for just a good book to get people started? You know what I mean?
Great
Like
question.
just a place to begin. It doesn't have to be any particular spot, but just a good one to just kind of introduce people to the life that the life of Bobby. Yeah. That's what you'd say, yeah. Do you
um,
have anything like that, brother?
I mean, I would say perennial philosophy is always one of my top five books,
Okay,
especially
very
if
quickly.
the
I
world
wish I had a
ended. You know?
chance to say something real quick, but I just want to say the perennial philosophy is a brutal book, man.
It's just,
Like
it's
it is hard.
heavy. It's
It
heavy.
is hard to read, man. And like I started it as a teenager and I was like, this is too hard for me. I came back to it in college. It took me like 5 months to read. You know, I'd go through a paragraph, my head would hurt. You know what I like, just
It's
we're
dense.
not all it's just I'm a very normal reader, you know. So
Uh,
how about something a little more digestible for the everyman? You know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
I mean, it is like that's the thing. Like for me, I kind of thrive with complexity. You know, complexity was what I was looking for. But I will say, like varieties of religious experience is a great place to start. William James is a brilliant guy. He also has some great texts about consciousness and pure experience that are good. Like you have there, it all depends on kind of. I always like to kind of know what the person's into, which helps because you can come at it through so many different ways. Um, and so like I would also say, especially Western people, like if you like philosophy and stuff, I would suggest getting a book of the pre-Socratic philosophy, because you can get one book and you can get basically all the text that's available from all these guys and read all the text that even the professionals have available to themselves, so you can read basically the whole thing that they have, and that gets you kind of set up for starting to explore at least the beginnings of Western thought, and how and a lot of the early ideas about the fundamental natures, the metaphysics, and then that kind of sets you up to get into Plato, Neoplatonism, and that kind of thing. Because I would definitely recommend Plotinus if you never read the Enneads. The Enneads is a beautiful, beautiful text, especially the later Enneads, the fifth, sixth. They're just some of the some brilliant things. And then of course, like favorites, like I think everyone should read the Upanishads. You should read the I Ching. I mean, you should read the Tao Te Ching. You should read
You've read the I Ching? No way. Really?
yeah.
That's incomprehensible. Oh
It's
my
like
God.
He's like, I read it for the third time last night.
Well,
Oh my
but
God.
it's also one of the oldest systems of binary in the world.
Chase, do you know what the I Ching is? Like
I ching ching chong ching.
it,
No, I have no
it's
idea what it
like
is. I have no idea.
it's like the insane Chinese book of numbers. And like they use it all like every time you name a baby, you have to use the I Ching. Like
Really?
it's consulted for all fortune telling. Like it's this ancient, it's before
Yes,
Lao and stuff like that. Like
Really?
it's super ancient. And to this day, they consulted for everything. Like it's this crazy, it's
yes.
incomprehensible. I don't know how the hell you tackled that, but wow.
Well,
Gotcha.
like the thing about the I Ching though, a lot of famous people and a lot of really smart people have used the I Ching for a lot of cool stuff. So like if you really start to and see, I got really interested in divinatory systems, divination, and divination of around the world, and the I Ching
Divination? This is what is this?
divination, like
Divin
seeing kind of like predicting the future is what it kind of, but it's also like divining the future a lot of times is what it's associated with.
What does divining the future mean?
Like they would use different methods, like people reading entrails or reading tea leaves or using the I Ching or using sticks, throwing sticks down on the ground so you get
Okay,
a
it's
pattern.
just a different method to get there. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because ultimately a lot of these methods, I saw divination method as kind of a way to give your mind space to move within. So
Okay.
you can kind of like reach answers that you can't reach if you didn't use the system, because the system will give you answers that relate to your mind instantly, no matter what the system is. So you can kind of use any system. But the I Ching, it's like 8,000. I mean, some of the oldest I Chings are thousands and thousands of years old on animal bones, but it's the first system binary that humans came to. And it's actually geomancy and the Ifa oracles in Africa are also this same binary system. They have less symbols, but it's very, very, very similar symbols. So you have kind of this interesting tradition of computational logic. You can ask this book a question and it'll give you an answer to any question you ever ask it. So you can ask it questions infinitely and it'll always give you answers. So you have something that's almost like a computer or like an AI very early on. You have this system made up of symbolic logic that answers your questions. And
Yeah,
it's
Chase,
kind
like
of a very profound thing.
the I Ching's like it is absolutely essential to Chinese history and culture. Like even Confucius, who's strictly philosophy, right? Like
Yeah,
he's all about rituals and like he's very much staying in the material world, you know.
yeah,
Um, he like half of his writing is about consulting the I Ching. You
yes,
know,
Really?
yes.
like learning. Oh yeah,
Wait, who created the I Ching, or is nobody knows? This is
Nobody knows.
nobody knows. Okay.
But
it's like you
there,
said, thousands and thousands of years old.
the
Sure.
King Win sequence is one of the oldest like sequencing of it, and it has it in a very interesting sequence. And there's different sequences of the I Ching that become popular, but Terence McKenna specifically had a lot of uh, like visions of the King Win sequence and the importance of the King Win sequence. But like I think divination in general is interesting. If you really like, it's a really interesting area of study. So like because even like the Tibetans too, like they'll wear hundreds of pounds of clothes, like a hat that wears 200 pounds, a clothes that wears 200 pounds. And so when they're in their normal state, they can't move or walk around. But when they're in their like a trance state or in this state to give a divination, they can dance and jump around and move. And so it gets very interesting.
That is cool. I love the fact that the quietest member of this podcast raises his hand in his little picture. So yes, Austin, please tell us so politely what's on your mind, brother.
Yeah, I feel this conversation being pulled into another train, and I feel like we've probably been going for about 2 hours. And Dean, I divine that you're probably ready to shut this down. So I'm gonna
Oh
be the
well, we're
bad
at
guy.
an
I'm gonna be
hour.
the bad guy here.
All right. Well, we got the book recommendations, and I tell you, it really was like being on a spaceship. I feel like Bobby took us to galaxy, different thought to different thought. Man, that was fun, man. I really enjoyed it. So, Bobby, thanks, man. You came on a random ass podcast and some minds, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me. It's really fun. It's nice to get to talk to new people, get to talk to express the ideas of people who haven't heard them before.
Well, we're gonna when we look back on this, because we're small scale now, they're gonna be like, you know what it was, Chase? It was that episode with Bobby, and that hooked me in. I was like, oh yeah, is that right? So we definitely gonna have you back in the future, dude. I enjoyed it. It was fun. You know, I got the PhD, but I don't have the depth as you, and it's just I think he got numbed out with the school process, which is unfortunate. It's fucking
Yeah,
like the fascination was there and then they killed it.
yeah.
Man, I didn't know a lot of that shit. Yeah, we have to have you on again.
Well, there's definitely a thing where you could spend a lifetime on any of these
Easily,
details.
easily.
So it's like if definitely sometime if you ever want to talk about specific things or all that kind or specific text or stuff like
Dude,
that,
I want to talk about
you
the
know.
Halo psychology, and then we're gonna bring back the four-man tournament on one big screen, and we're
Yeah.
gonna old school shit. It's gonna be it's like a Super Bowl. It's gonna be like a Super Bowl. And you know what else we're gonna do it before I forget? We're gonna next year. We're gonna do voodoo dolls for Christmas. We're gonna sell custom made voodoo dolls. It's gonna sell out, man. Everybody's gonna order one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want one for my wife. Give me that thing, man. Yeah.
Dude, I got to show you guys my voodoo doll later. I love this thing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
dude, that
All
was a
right.
synchronicity moment. That was fucking weird, man.
No,
That was out of
Yeah,
the
that was
blue.
very weird.
we
That was
were,
cool.
dude, on the voodoo doll, we got little needles, and on them we got Chinese words for have a stinky breath or big
Oh, really?
fart.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so like you have little needles that do different things. But it's pretty cute. It's pretty cute. All right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for listening to the Divine Brothers. Thanks to Bobby for coming by, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.